Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. Have you ever had something that you've done in your life where you didn't realize how either good or bad it was until you stopped doing it and started doing something else instead? Well, that's what this video is about, because I'll tell you what, homeschooling helped me realize just how restrictive school actually is. You know, I find it a little bit ironic that I am doing this video today, now in the midst of a time when most parents have their kids at home and are doing their schoolwork at home with them. Because to be honest with you, this topic itself, I had written down on my list a long time ago. I have a lot of topics written in 2 different books because I have so many topics. And being the type A person that I am, I usually will just try to do them in order. Although from time to time I do throw spur of the moment videos in. But this is just one of those things that I've had written down for a long time, never got around to doing it. And now that I am going to talk about how homeschooling helped me to realize how restrictive school was, it's during a time when people are at home and their kids are doing distance learning, and it's driving parents crazy because they are feeling extremely restricted from that setting. And here's the thing. I've said this in a few of my other videos, and I'm going to say it again. What these parents are doing is not homeschooling. What they are doing is distance learning. So in essence, they are just doing school at home with their kids. Their kids are still going to school, but they're just going to school at home. Hence, you are going to have all of the restrictions, if not more, that come with a typical school routine. And I'm going to just share with you some ways that homeschooling can free you of these things. And I'm not going to just talk about it in a distance learning point of view. I'm also going to talk about how it's restrictive in a brick and mortar aspect, because there are still some kids who are in brick and mortar schools right now, and kids will be going back to school someday. So I also wanted to share with you how homeschooling really can ease the burden of the restrictions that a lot of parents feel when their kids are in school. So first of all, let's just start with distance learning, since that seems to be the main thing that's going on right now. When your kids are distance learning, you are at the mercy of the teacher's schedule. If your kids are doing Zoom, I don't know how all of the distance learning works. I know that it's not all the same, but I'm just going to talk about a few things that I have seen that some people are doing. But a lot of kids have Zoom classes where they have to be there at a certain time, and their teacher's there, and their whole class has to be there, and they have to do these lessons online, and then they have, assignments and whatnot. And, that is almost as bad as a brick and mortar school when your kids have to get up super duper early and sometimes catch the bus, or you have to take them to school, or they have to walk to school. And when you are homeschooling, you are completely free of that time limit. You are not bound to anyone's schedule when you are homeschooling other than your own. So another thing that I wanted to tell you about is that, it seems that a lot of these distance learning students and school students, again, in the brick and mortar days, they're at the mercy of the assignments that are handed to them by the teachers. And that means that the parents are also at the mercy of the assignments that are given to the kids. I saw one person comment that their 6-year-old was given 10 math worksheets to do. And a lot of times parents have no idea how to teach the things to their kids anymore, especially when it comes to math. Things are just given a completely different approach than most people had. Most parents grew up with traditional math, and unfortunately a lot of kids are getting Common Core math. It makes no sense to parents. So not only are kids being given so many assignments, like just boatloads of assignments, parents are unable to help them in a lot of cases because they didn't learn things that way. And parents don't have the advantage of, like a teacher's manual or an answer key or any way that they can help to explain things to their child. Now, while there are some teachers who are willing to help their students when they are having issues, there are some teachers who really just kind of hand off the assignments. Again, this is what I'm being told. They are just kind of handing off the assignments, and they're expecting parents and kids to kind of just get through it together. And you know, that's one of the great things about homeschooling, is that you don't have to worry about having someone else tell you what your kids have to do. You choose what your kids do. So for example, rather than having your 6-year-old do 10 pages of math, you can have your child do 2 sides of a worksheet for math. And on top of that, you can have them doing math in a book that explains it in a way that you as a parent can help them with, because most homeschool curriculums are taught with a traditional math approach. But a lot of times you will also have access to the answers. You will have access to the teacher's manuals. I have already had math curriculums where the teacher's manual actually tells you step by step. This was for algebra. I think it was Saxon, but they showed you step by step how to work out the problems, so that as the parent, you would be able to help your child. You don't have that when your kids are doing distance learning. Now, maybe some teachers are giving parents the answer keys, but I don't know of any teachers personally who are giving these things out to the parents. And it is, it's making a lot of parents pull their hair out, and it's making them feel completely frustrated and helpless, and it's making them feel like their kids just aren't learning anything. So let's just turn into the brick and mortar. Now, we've talked a little bit about some things, because there are some similarities between what's going on with distance learning and what's going on with brick and mortar. But I'll tell you what, I have never done distance learning with my kids. However, 6 of my kids have spent at least some time in public school, and my oldest actually graduated from public school. So I have experience with that, and I can tell you that there was no time in my life that I felt more restricted as a parent than when my kids were in school. Because again, I was at the mercy of their schedule. Everything in my life had to surround what time the kids had to be in school. A lot of times when you have a kindergartner who's only going to school for half a day, you then have to go there in the middle of the day to pick up your kindergartner, and then you have to go after school to pick the rest of the kids up, and then you might have after school programs going on. And as a homeschooling parent, I'm going to reiterate this fact. Your schedule is what you want it to be. We start our homeschool day at 10 o'clock in the morning. I know other homeschooling families who don't start their day until the afternoon. It is so nice to not have somebody dictating to you when you have to be somewhere or when your kids have to do something. And for those kids who really do need that extra sleep and like to sleep in, homeschooling is the perfect thing for that. Because I'll tell you what, your child not wanting to get up early every morning is not laziness. That is natural. Kids need more sleep, and school really does fight against that. So another thing that really kind of had me feeling like I was choking all the time when my kids were in school was the morning rush when they were in school. And again, this is because of them having to be there at a certain time, but every morning was so hectic. Even if I would lay out all of their books and shoes and backpacks, and I made sure that I had all their papers signed and everything, something would happen every morning that we would end up running around like chickens with our heads cut off, trying to get to the school in time. When we are homeschooling, again, we can ease into the morning. The kids can wake up at a decent time. They can have breakfast and not guzzle it down. They can do school in their pajamas if you want to. Now, a lot of families don't like doing that, but even getting dressed doesn't have to be something that is going to be hectic for you. So that is just another big stress reliever, especially if you have a big family and you're homeschooling. And I talked about signing papers. You know, that's another thing, is that a lot of parents have kids who are inundating them with papers that have to be signed, especially if you have more than one child in school. You'll have, kids handing you their agenda, because our school made us initial the agenda to show that our kids had done their schoolwork. Even if they had their schoolwork to turn in, for some reason, we also had to initial it. Then we would have a separate schedule where we had to initial if they had done their 15 or 20 minutes of reading. And then we would have another folder where they would have a little label that said, bring these back, and you would have to go through it, and there would likely be 5 or 10 pages that you as the parent had to sign then. And again, if you have one child in school, it's probably not a big deal. But yeah, at one point I did have like 6 kids in school. It was a big deal for me, and homeschooling completely cut that out. So, what about when your kids are sick? This was something that really felt like I was a secondary parent, and I've mentioned this in a few of my other videos. When my kids were in school, I felt like a secondary parent. I always felt like I was having to answer to someone else about my own children. Now, usually it was answering to the teachers. And I've got to say that I was very blessed in that my kids, they had some really good teachers when they were in school. So I'm not putting this on them and saying that they made me feel this way, but just the whole hierarchy of the school system makes you feel that you as the parent kind of have to answer to other people when it comes to decisions that you're making for your own children. And you know, one of the things that really ate at me was when your kids would be sick and you would have to call the school and, you know, you would let them know that your child was sick. Then on top of that, you would have to send in a note. And if you forgot to send in the note, they would keep bugging you for the note, even if you had already called when your child was sick to tell them that they weren't going to be there. And then there are those times that the schools decide not to excuse those absences. Like one time when I was pregnant with my 9th child, and I was being monitored at the hospital, and it was unexpected. So I had my daughter who was in kindergarten with me, and I called the school to tell them what was going on and that I had no way to get her there. And they actually told me that they were counting this absence as unexcused because the reason that I was at the hospital had nothing to do with my daughter. I kid you not, she was in kindergarten. So when I say that I felt restricted as a parent for these reasons, yeah, you as the parent should never have to answer to someone else why your child is in school or isn't in school. You are the parent. And I think that that's something that a lot of parents forget when they're sending their kids to school. It's something that I forgot. You know, not really, obviously, but I forgot because it was how I was made to feel a lot of times. And even like with doctor's notes. How many times have your kids had a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment? And then you would tell the school, you know, I have to come pick my child up because they have a doctor's appointment. And they would tell you, well, you have to bring back a doctor's note. As if your word as a parent isn't good enough. They need to have something from someone else because, again, it's a whole trust issue with parents. And that is something that I personally feel so much freedom from when we are homeschooling, because I have become the primary parent of my kids again. I always was their primary parent, but I didn't feel that way. And I no longer feel like I'm having a tug of war with other adults telling me what I should do with my own children. I am responsible for their care. I am responsible for feeding them, clothing them, and I am responsible for educating them. And while that might seem strangling to some parents, if you consider it, if you compare it to the alternative and all of the hoops that you have to jump through to follow those authorities at school, I would say that it's a no-brainer that homeschooling offers the freedom that public school never could. That's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one over on Instagram because YouTube disabled my comments. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.